Hey, Mike, how are you? It's Matt. Thanks for calling in.
Yeah, of course, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, awesome. Listen, I would love to answer your question. I hear you, I'm seeing on the screen here that you have a great question ready for us.
I run San Diego chapter of Founder Institute, and for context, it's the largest early stage startup accelerator in the world. So we focus on this pre-seed stage where we're helping these great startups get off the ground, and in some cases, helping them scale from there. And we cover legal, we cover financial, we cover accounting. I mean, everything, all the basics of getting a startup off the ground, but we don't cover cybersecurity. And I guess knowing what you know, what would you tell startups in this early stage, primarily pre-seed or seed? What kinds of things should they set up as to avoid having to backtrack and waste a lot of time and money fixing things in the future? What have you seen?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And so, interestingly enough, I actually have experience personally working with startups in the hedge fund business, and it's similar to what you're doing. It's sort of like hedge fund in a box. They come out of the gate, and it's like, what do you need to get a hedge fund off the ground? And I kind of feel like that's what you were just asking in the same way. So that list looks like strategy, right? So, and it's very broad. I mean, you can't get into the weeds and look at what specific tools and, you're putting Cisco switches in. You got to go high level. So you don't want to have to go back and do it. You want to look at strategy. You definitely need to make sure that you have a C.I.S.O, which basically is a chief information security officer who absolutely can guide and be there as a thought leader. And with that, you go into risk management, because that's really what it all comes down to. With the risk management, that leads you into your budget. And of course, with your budget, you're looking at what are the outcomes you want. So, I mean, the budget could be endless, but if you tie the budget to, when you look at the compliance that you're looking to adhere to, and you look at any other outcomes that are specific to your industry, that feeds back to the budget, and you put a process in place, to really manage the whole thing. So when you put those whole things together and you look at that list, it really comes down to who are you going to put in to help guide you from the beginning? What problems are you going to solve, not just for today, but anticipating the future and where you're going to go, which obviously means what software, what tools, how are you going to scale it, but it's strategy planning, budget, compliance planning, and process. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess, the follow-up to that is, where do you place cybersecurity in the list of importance when a startup is just getting off the ground?
This may sound crazy, but I think it's number one. It's number one in any situation. You can be getting the startup off the ground. You could be a week in, you could be 6 months in, you could be a year in. You have zero flexibility. If you have a breach and you go down, and you're down for a day, 3 days, or a week, how's that going to play into the future plans of what you guys are trying to do? So, you can plan for sales if they're slow. You can plan for cash flow. You can plan for a lot of business problems. You can not necessarily plan for an immediate outage if you haven't already had that plan in place. It might not sound clear, but if that plan is not in place from day one, you have zero reaction time. You're down, and that's it. So it's number one in my book. It's the biggest risk you're going to have.
Yeah, that makes sense. And we'll have to have a follow-up chat at some point, and maybe have you come in and work with and teach some of our startups. Because again, that's something that we don't cover, that I based on what you're saying, sounds like something that should be something that's covered in our accelerator and others.
What's the number one risk? It's cybersecurity, but inside of that, it's actually the people. And what I mean by that is training. It's phishing emails. It's when those emails come in. What do the employees actually do? Well, it takes one person to click on an email, on a link, and boom, the whole entire company is compromised. So it's so important, as you know, with startups, it's so important to have the right people from day one, but it's also important to make sure that those people don't become a liability because of unintentional ignorance or carelessness.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you actually just reminded me of one more question. I don't want to take up a lot of time, but
Go ahead.
and so what would you say is a good resource to point these startup founders to if they're just getting started and understanding kind of the impact and importance of understanding cybersecurity for their startup?
You know what? There's a framework. It's called NIST, N-I-S-T. It's the National Institute for Standards and Technology. There are sort of like cheat sheets. There are sort of like cliff note books that that exist, or videos that exist out there. NIST is the framework that pretty much every cybersecurity insurance policy and compliance framework is based on. If you look at that and you understand overall what all the angles are that you should look at, it really gives you a good position from which to begin to ask people that you're considering working with on cybersecurity questions. First and foremost, are they familiar with NIST? Because if they're not, you might have the wrong person or the wrong organization. But that's a good place to look, NIST.
Got it. Yeah, really helpful. I appreciate it, Matt.
Awesome. Listen, thanks for calling, and that was a fantastic question, and good luck with everything you're working on.
All right, wonderful. Likewise. Thanks so much.
Talk soon. Thanks.
Okay, take care.
If you want to find out more about how we can help you with your IT, with your technology, with your cybersecurity, click the link down below, schedule a free consultation. We'd love to speak with you.